Hello, and welcome to another episode of Amiga Retro. Yes, Amiga Retro indeed. This is part 2 of the HD-64 HDMI output for the Commodore 64. Yes. So I'm going to do away with the background music continuously playing forever, since some people were concerned about that, and I guess if my voice got too quiet, it kind of muddled what I was saying, even though I have a habit of doing that anyways. What we're going to do now is quickly go over the jumper settings you have to do on the board that's in here to configure it for either the short board, the long board, and other various features. So what I'm going to do first, power off of course, is remove the case, which I obviously took the liberty of removing the screws. I'm going to unplug that here. And I'm going to lean this gently, like that. Can't really see what I'm doing. The keyboard parts over there on the wall, so I don't have to unplug that cable because it's very tight, so I don't have to worry about a loose connection, but yes, tight indeed. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to move the camera in position and show you a close-up of the board. I will be right back. Okay, so I've removed the interleaver cable out of the way so you can get a better picture of the board here. If you're wondering what this is just for the interleaver, as you saw before, to keep it away from this metal can here. It's not very sharp, but I don't, the shield I should say for the VIC. It's not very sharp, but you know, better to be safe than sorry, and it didn't take much to do. But anyway. So this is the long board that I have. If you have a long board, you need to supply 5 volts, which I am taking from the voltage regulator on the circuit board, which is a bit further up from where it's located. You can also take it from the cartridge port, but the reason why I did that is I was getting about 4.8, 4.75 volts off of this, where I was getting 5.05, very close to 5 volts, or at least closer, off of this connection here, which you can't see because reasons. Oh, there's my hole down there. This is, anyways, you can't see it, it's behind. There we go. It's right here on the board. Anyway, so back to the main attraction. And yes, as I was saying, so there's a 5 volts there. I'm going to have to take one of these off so you can see the first connection I made. Remember, I said this was the short board? Yeah, right. The long board. I have the long board, not the short board, though I have several of those. I'm not sure how well you can see that here, but right in this section where I took the cable off, that's actually how you set it for, it says 12 volt VIC, and all the long boards have the 12 volt VIC. So this has to be jumpered. If this is not jumpered, the unit won't even power on. On the short boards, it will actually get the power from the board itself through the headers that are here and here. These actually plug right into the motherboard. This is where the RF modulator went. So these connectors here is where the RF modulator pins were. This has now replaced it, and it's, of course, there's a socket pin header, you know, plugs right into its location there. But the short board gets its power from there. The long board does not. So that's why you have to set this jumper, and then you have to hook up the voltage to here. You can solder it on. I like to use these jumper cables so I can just remove the whole board if I have to. So the good thing is if you do have a short board, you do not need any of this. You do not need this jumper, and you do not need to hook up the ground and the 5 volts to the header that's located here. Okay, I almost forgot I had to take off the negative header here. You can barely see it, it's under the pin here, but there's another solder pad under here. There's 3 of them. This has to be set to either the original or the standard. So the original had, I guess, a higher chroma output than industry standards. The voltage was a bit on the high side, so it might oversaturate the colors, or some other monitors might have issues processing it. Or you can have it set to standard, which I have it set to. So all the equipment I'm using is going to be using the standard chroma. So pick your choice there. I have it set to S, which is standard, and O, of course, original is the original output. I think this only affects the composite output here on the actual analog video out. It doesn't affect the, I don't believe so anyways, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe it affects the HDMI output since it's processed differently. That is that one taken care of. The other jumper of interest is the audio here. So I'm using mono, and the internal. So there's a basically an audio, as you can see here, and it's the right channel audio. Of course, this thing only has one channel. So it's connected to, you have external, so 3 pads again. You have external, there's a center pad which has to be connected to something, and then there's the internal. So I have it bridged to the internal, so it's going to use the internal audio off of the board. If you use the external, that will be the right channel, and then you have to worry about this header here, wiring the left and the right external and all that other fun stuff. That's covered a bit more in the documentation, but unless you have a stereo SID combination or something else like that, you can just set it to internal. You don't have to worry about any additional wiring, and all that is covered in the documentation, that if you do want to connect left and right audio, and then you want to pass the HDMI audio out in stereo versus mono like I have right now. And that's a good thing about this. You do get HDMI video, you also get HDMI audio, so it's a one cable solution. So that is all the headers of interest here. There's a bunch of LEDs on here as well. The 3.3 is okay, 5 volt is okay, and then there's an LED located by the HDMI connector as well to indicate there's I'm assuming, indicate that there's an HDMI output signal available for the connector here, which is the output. Now it'll be on regardless if this is connected or not, but it's just, you should have three green LEDs lit up showing you that everything is operational. You have voltages where it should be, and you have an HDMI signal available for output. So enough of that. So I just wanted to cover this a bit more in detail. I didn't really go over it too much in the last video. Any other things that I missed or got wrong can be clarified or corrected once you look at the manual for this, for the HD-64. But now we can move on to the configuration options that you have available on this card to suit your needs. And before I put everything back together again, there's just the interleaver cable here, held down, like I said before, to prevent any possible issues against the shielding around the VIC chip. And of course, your 3 LEDs, meaning that everything should be just fine, which it is, because as you can see, this camera can adjust, and I'm way too close. Back a bit. You can see that we have a lovely display. Now I'm going to go to the capture card so it looks a bit more impressive than this. And I will be back at that time, and like I said, we'll go over the features, the settings that you can change to suit this to your needs. Anyway, enough of that. I will be right back. And here it is, together, the mechanical keyboard LED illuminated of goodness, the new case, all that stuff covered in the last video. And as promised, we will now jump to the capture device and take a look at the HDMI goodness and audio that this has to offer. Okay, so here we are at the HDMI output. As you can see, it looks really nice. There's no video distortion, no artifacting, as you saw in the comparison in the last video. It's rock steady. So when you get the firmware, remember the firmware has to be updated directly on the card itself. Like you have to interface it between the PC and the computer, then run a program on the PC. It flashes a new firmware. With the new firmware, will also come with a version suited for it to do the configuration. So we're going to do the configuration program, which came with this version of the firmware, which I believe the latest is 0.14, at least at the time of this recording. So I'm going to, using my Ultimate 2 Plus, go into the menu option that we need. So I'm going to go down to the thumb drive that I have connected. I'm going to enter that. And go down to Tools. This is where I put it. It's like I said, all this stuff is just stored on the thumb drive into all these folders you're looking at for easy access. So go into Tools and down to HD-64 and enter there. And this is the config utility. And like I said, this config utility will be bundled with the version of firmware. Please use the version that came with the firmware, because the results, if you mix and match, might be rather unpredictable. Yes. Here we go, and I'm just going to run this. And it loads pretty quick, and there it is. It's a pretty basic utility, but it works. So the thing of interest is to edit the parameters. We'll just go into there. I'll just show you the options first before I change anything. I'll go through all of this, actually. So there's your HD-64 parameter adjustments. You can add the blur effect, You can have mono audio on, which is in our case it is because I'm not using stereo. The gray dot bug, which I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a particular feature of the video output normally that's generated. I am not sure. Anyone wants to add that in the comments, please feel free. Then there's the integer scaling. Yeah, different here. This will change the size, the aspect slightly of the screen size. You'll see that later. Scan lines, which I will be turning on because I prefer scan lines. Some people do not. And of course, you can vary the intensity of the scan lines here using the scan line width, scan line depth, zoom factor. So if you don't like too many borders, as you can see around the edges, you can get rid of that. Of course, you're going to start losing top and bottom stuff. But some games don't utilize the entire screen anyway, so maybe zoom might work for you. Widescreen, self-explanatory. Set of 4:3, you'll get stretched for those who like stuff that looks like that. And then the video mode. I'm going to leave it at RGB, but there's, I think, I can't, we'll see it when we get there. But there's several other modes that you can use as well. I'm going to go back. And then we can edit the color palette, if that's your thing. So here you can change all 16 colors of the Commodore 64 to whatever you want using the RGB values. I'm going to leave this alone. But there are people out there that want to do this. That's why it exists. So you can change that as well if you want. And the restore defaults is self-explanatory. Any changes you make, either in the color palette or in the parameters, that will go back to factory defaults. Basically, you know, whenever you update the firmware or anything to that effect, or if you mess something up and you want to start from scratch, this is what you would do. And save is self-explanatory. This will actually show an X in that box to let you know that something has changed and that you need to save it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to edit parameters. And navigating on this is a bit weird. You don't use the cursor keys like I was doing on the Ultimate 2 Plus menu. You actually use the WASD keys actually to move around, almost like you're playing a game or something. But once I figured that out, well, right there, it's right on screen. But being the typical person, I was struggling forever and then realized that the instructions were actually right there at the top of the screen. But there you go, WASD. So I'm going to edit the parameters. I'm going to hit enter. Now just to show you, I'm not going to use blur, but it's real time. So when I hit this key, you'll see what happens. It will make it blurrier, as if you need glasses. Some people may prefer that. I guess on a CRT, maybe it might look a bit better. I don't know. Mine's going to be, of course, using HDMI output on a LCD type screen. Okay, and got mono audio, which I'm going to leave as is. Integer scaling, a gray dot bug, I should say. You know, we're going to leave that. The reason I kind of stumbled there is it's kind of weird how it showed a checkbox as if I changed that, but even though I turn it off, it stays checked. But yeah, don't worry about that. That's fine. So I'm going to turn this on. You'll see the screen will get slightly larger. Okay, and if some of the games start looking weird, if you set this or like you get cropping or whatever, you can always turn this off. I'm going to turn on the scan lines as well. So now you have the lines going through the video. The strength is like depth and all of that is here. I'm going to leave them at their defaults of 2 and 3. I'm going to leave zoom alone. But if you want to see what zoom does, if I knew what I was doing, 1 second here. Oh, up. Well, zoom will zoom into the image. So I probably, yes, that's what I need to do. So it doesn't seem to do anything here. So it might work later once all the configurations are saved. So I'm going to try to go back up to this. There we go. And lower that down to 1. I think it was that 1 before, wasn't it? There we go. Oh, no, sorry. I'm going to put it at 0. What am I talking about? There we go. Okay, and I will continue to go down in here. I'm going to leave that off. But just to show you the difference that you have, RGB, the screen will blank a bit. Sorry about that. I'll take care of that in editing. You have DVI. DVI will not give you audio. So if you select this, there will be not audio output. You'll have to take the audio out of the Commodore 64 yourself. So be warned. I will, of course, leave it in as RGB. And then the other one, I believe, is, yeah, YCC. which I will not be using that either. So like I said, I will go back to RGB right here. And that looks good. So just go over my settings. Everything looks good. So I'm going to go down to where it says back. And then see how save is now has a X in it. So I'll click save. And that should be that. I'm just going to do a quick reboot here. I said reboot. I have to get out of this menu actually. One moment. There we go. Reboot. Okay, and as you can see, it has all the lines, sorry, the scan lines in it and everything, and it has the screen's a bit larger, the integer scaling, I believe it was called, all of that. So we're going to power cycle this and try a few games. Now, I just want to see by power cycling it if the settings stay. So give me one moment. So I powered the unit off for about 30 seconds, turned it back on again, and as you can see, all the settings have remained, so that's good. And like I said, if you don't like the settings or you want to change them, you can always go back to the config utility. If you just want to reset it back to defaults, you can do that as well, and you'll be back where you started. And of course, always save every changes, including defaults. And you're good to go. So we'll be ending this video with a demo called 1991, but before that, I would like to thank all my subscribers for subscribing and watching my videos and leaving comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so, and don't forget to hit the like button or the other option if that's so desires. And leave comments, please, and if you have any questions, I'm always available to answer them to the best that I can. And that is that, as they say. So let's get the show on the road. So we're going to go to 1991, back in time, I guess. I hope you enjoy the demo. And as always, thanks for watching.